She lay half buried in the hay, the sharp stalks biting through thin fabric and scraped skin. Her dress was torn at the hem and shoulder, cloth twisted and caught as if the land itself had grabbed her and refused to let go. Dirt streaked her calves and knees, mixed with blood and sweat, drying fast in the punishing heat. Panic had stripped her down to something raw and shaking. She didn't know whether the man standing over her was about to save her, or take the last thing she had left. The summer sun over western Kansas showed no mercy. It burned the same over fear and innocence alike. Dust hung in the air beyond Dodge City, thick and unmoving, heavy as guilt. It coated everything: boots, fences, lungs, memories. Nothing escaped it for long. Eliza Ward had been in town less than 2 days. She'd come west with a small valise, a folded letter sealed with wax, and a careful hope that the frontier might still hold a decent man. The letter promised marriage. Stability. A place where a woman could belong without being owned. It had seemed like enough when she boarded the coach back east. Now she was gasping for breath beside a ranch shed, chest heaving, fingers clawed into hay, eyes locked on a stranger nearly twice her age. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her knees burned where she'd fallen. And the man, Caleb Hartman, did not rush her. That was the first thing she noticed. He dropped to one knee slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter her. His hands were rough, split from rope and sun, knuckles scarred and swollen with old breaks. A pale, jagged scar crossed 2 fingers, clean, deliberate, like something that had healed wrong and never been spoken about again. One hand steadied her shoulder, light but certain. The other braced against the dirt. His eyes were not on her face. They were fixed on the open land behind her. He was listening. Eliza tried to speak. Only dust came out with her breath. Her shoes were scuffed through. Her dress was ripped where prairie grass and gravel had torn at it. Thin streaks of dried blood traced her calf, not deep wounds, but the kind left by running hard and falling harder. She hadn't been beaten. She'd been chased. Caleb knew the difference. 49 years on the frontier had taught him that fear left patterns. And this wasn't the pattern of a woman who'd fallen by accident. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of horses and hot wood. "Did someone follow you?" he asked. His voice was low. Steady. The kind that didn't ask questions it didn't already half know. Eliza nodded once. That was enough. 2 hours earlier, she'd stepped down from the mail coach at the edge of Dodge City, heart pounding with the strange sensation of being both seen and invisible. Men had looked her over like cattle, some curious, some careless, some too quiet. Caleb had been there. Standing apart. Hat pulled low. Saying little. He'd taken her bag, offered water, and pointed her toward the road out of town without touching her once. That had mattered to her, even then. They hadn't gone far before she felt it. Footsteps behind her that slowed when she slowed. A presence that stayed just far enough back to pretend it wasn't there. She told herself she was imagining it. Because imagining danger feels easier than admitting you don't know how to survive it. Then she turned. The man behind her stopped too. Just long enough to smile. Her legs moved before her thoughts could catch up. She ran. She tripped. She slid into the hay hard enough to knock the breath from her chest. And then Caleb was there. Now, as he helped her sit upright, he noticed the small things. The way her hands clenched when the shed rattled in the wind. The way her eyes kept cutting toward the open land instead of toward him. The way a folded letter had slipped from her bag, half open in the dirt. Caleb picked it up. The wax seal wasn't broken clean. It had been pressed back into place. Someone else had touched this letter. Someone had read her name and known she was coming long before she ever stepped onto Kansas dirt. From the fence line, a man watched. Silas Crow leaned against a post, hat tipped back, wearing the kind of smile that passed for friendly out here. "Everything all right over there?" he called. Caleb didn't answer. He helped Eliza to her feet, keeping his body between her and the open field. His hand stayed light at her elbow, but firm enough to anchor her. Silas's smile thinned just a little. That moment, small, quiet, would later be twisted into something else entirely. People would say a rancher had been found looming over his young bride in the hay. They'd say she looked frightened for a reason. They'd say a lot of things. Words traveled fast in places like this. Faster than truth. Caleb knew that if he took Eliza inside and shut the door, whoever had followed her would come back at night. If he hid her, danger would grow bolder. So he did the last thing anyone expected. He put her in the wagon. Not to take her home. Not to comfort her. He drove straight toward Dodge City. Dust boiled up behind them as the wheels creaked forward, every mile carrying them closer to witnesses, rumors, and the full weight of the law. Eliza didn't understand it yet. Neither would the town. By sundown, people would be asking one question, and it wouldn't be about who chased her. It would be about Caleb Hartman. What kind of man brings his frightened young bride into town dirty, shaken, and silent, and asks the sheriff to take her inside? Was he protecting her? Or was he the reason she'd been running in the first place? Caleb didn't slow the wagon. The horse snorted. Dust rose behind them like a bad decision you couldn't take back. Eliza sat stiff beside him, hands folded tight in her lap, dirt still streaking her legs. She waited for him to explain. He didn't. That silence was worse than shouting. Dodge City was already awake when they arrived. Men leaned outside the saloon pretending not to stare. Women paused mid-step, eyes flicking to Eliza's bare knees, the torn hem of her dress, the way she sat too straight, like someone bracing for bad news. Caleb drove past them all. Past the hotel. Past his own place at the edge of town. He pulled the reins in front of the sheriff's office. "Why here?" Eliza asked. "Because this is where people can see you," Caleb said. Inside, the office smelled of old paper, sweat, and reheated coffee. Sheriff Tom Maddox took in the scene without comment. A rancher he knew by reputation. A young woman he didn't know at all, her story written across her clothes. "What happened?" the sheriff asked. "She was followed," Caleb said. Eliza nodded. "She needs to stay somewhere with witnesses," Caleb continued. "Somewhere no one can claim they didn't see her." It didn't look good. It looked like trouble. The sheriff cleared his throat. "There's a back room." The whispers started almost immediately. By nightfall, Dodge City was buzzing. Silas Crow's name floated through conversations like smoke. And while the town argued over gossip, someone else was making plans. Someone who had read her letter. Someone who didn't care what people believed. As Eliza sat on the narrow bench listening to judgment seep through the walls, one question circled her mind. Had Caleb brought her here to protect her? Or had he handed her to something worse? By morning, Dodge City already had a story. And stories like that didn't let go easy.